Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a really cool idea in the world of big data. What if? What if you could spin up a massive data crunching machine in like seconds, and then just make it vanish the second you're done with it? Well, that's pretty much the promise of Google Dataproc, and we're about to break down exactly how it's changing the whole game. To really appreciate what Dataproc does, we gotta go back in time a little. We need to understand the headache it was built to solve. So let's start with the old bottleneck, the slow, super expensive world of traditional big data. Not too long ago, if you wanted to set up a big data system, something like Hadoop, you were in for a marathon. It took weeks just to get the servers ready. And the worst part? You were paying for all that hardware 24/7, even when it was just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. Dataproc just flips that whole model on its head. Instead of weeks, you're up and running in about 90 seconds. And instead of those massive fixed costs, you literally only pay for what you use right when you need it. And this huge shift brings us right to the modern solution. What if you could have all the power of a giant data cluster, but only for the exact moment you actually need it? That simple question. Well, that's the core idea behind Google Dataproc. So at its heart, Dataproc is what we call a managed service. All that means is Google handles all the messy, complex setup and maintenance of tools like Apache Spark and Hadoop, so you get to focus on what you actually care about. Analyzing your data, it's built from the ground up to be fast, simple, and to work perfectly with all the open source tools that data scientists already know and love. And when we say fast, we are not kidding. The average time to get a fully configured Dataproc cluster running is just 90 seconds. Nope, that is not a typo. In about the time it takes you to make a cup of coffee, you can have an entire big data environment fired up and ready to go. Okay, so how on earth does Google pull this off? How can something so powerful be so incredibly simple and fast? Let's pop the hood and see how the magic actually works. A Dataproc cluster is kind of like an orchestra. You've got a master node, that's your conductor, right? It's telling everyone what to do. Then you have the worker nodes. They're the musicians in the orchestra, doing all the heavy lifting and processing the data. But here's the really crucial part. The data itself, the sheet music, it lives separately in a massive library like Google Cloud Storage. That separation is the absolute key to all of Dataproc's flexibility. And the star player in this orchestra is almost always Apache Spark. Its secret weapon is something called in-memory computing. See, by processing data directly in memory, instead of constantly reading it from a slow disk, it can get these unbelievable speed boosts. We're talking 10 to 100 times faster than older frameworks like MapReduce. It's just a whole different league. Now, all this speed and flexibility leads us to what is, without a doubt, Dataproc's most powerful feature, this idea that your data processing clusters don't have to be permanent fixtures. This is the whole concept of an ephemeral cluster. So instead of having a standard, long-running cluster that you're paying for around the clock, you can create a cluster for just one single job. And when that job's done, poof, the cluster automatically disappears. You only pay for the exact seconds it was actually working. It's kind of like renting a supercar just for the race instead of buying it and letting it collect dust in the garage. And this new model, well, it unlocks some serious cost savings. The ephemeral approach, that's the biggest piece of the pie for sure. But you can also use something called preemptible workers. Just think of them as deeply discounted spare servers that Google can take back with a little bit of notice. They're perfect for jobs that can handle a quick interruption. You combine that with auto-scaling, which automatically adjusts your cluster size to fit the workload, and suddenly the costs just plummet. Now, Dataproc is incredibly powerful, but it's not the only tool out there. So the big question is, when should you use it? And when should you maybe look at an alternative, like Dataflow or BigQuery? It pretty much breaks down like this. If you're moving an existing Hadoop or Spark job over, or if you need the total flexibility of open source tools, Dataproc is your champion. No question. If you want a completely hands-off, serverless way to run data pipelines, you'd be looking at Dataflow. And for lightning-fast, interactive SQL queries on massive datasets, well, BigQuery is the king. It's all about picking the right tool for the specific job you're doing. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What's the one thing you should remember? It really all comes down to these 4 things. First, the speed. 90 seconds to a running cluster is a total paradigm shift. Second, the cost. That pay-as-you-go, ephemeral model makes big data accessible to way more people. Third, flexibility. You're not locked into some proprietary system. You can use the open source tools you already know. And finally, and this is the most important one, the decoupling of compute and storage. That right there is the architectural magic that makes everything else possible. And this whole shift, it points to a much bigger trend in technology, which leaves us with one final question to think about. As our data just continues to explode in size and complexity, does the old model of buying and managing your own physical hardware even make sense anymore? Tools like Dataproc are suggesting that for most of us, the answer is a resounding no.